Chapter 11. Tying the Knot. When we reached the hotel, it was thrilling to meet the wedding party and see Sharon. She had arrived the day before. Lewis had stayed in Alabama with John Moore. Their house had septic tank and plumbing issues that had to be resolved. Joel's cousin, Margaret Gravely Lanning, and her husband, David, had also arrived from Minnesota the day before. Margaret and Sharon resemble each other enough to be sisters, not cousins. They flowed together well in managing details of the decorating and organization, and the Lannings are great singers too. Since they had arrived the day before, the church was already set up for the rehearsal meal with tablecloths that the threesome had ironed themselves. Ben and Martha Gravely were there. My sister Judy and her family were in town, but were out celebrating her birthday early. I look forward to seeing them the following day. After some delicious food from a local barbecue restaurant, the practice session began upstairs while Allison and Daniel stayed in the dining area and cleaned up. Everyone was very helpful to pitch in. Since we had a noon wedding to attend, we all got to bed early. Any undone details could wait till tomorrow. Allison and Daniel agreed to be gophers or go-fors to fetch last-minute supplies. There was one lack that I needed to address. When I promised Joel to provide the bubbles, I was just beginning to drive again. One afternoon, I was becoming weary but felt up to checking the bridal section at Walmart. There they were, 100 little bubble flasks for only $15. The photo on the package showed each one with a small blue ribbon on it. Why, of course, they needed some decoration. I wasn't finished yet, no problem. I knew where the ribbons were in the sewing notions. My brain was actually too tired to do the math for how much ribbon to buy, so I grabbed only 2 spools of 10 yards each. With a fresh mind, I would have thought 10 yards equal 360 inches cut in 10-inch strips equals 36 ribbons times 2 equals 72. I have 100 flasks, not enough ribbon, but I was tired. In D.C., I realized that I was short on ribbons. The next day, I accompanied Allison and Daniel on a trip to the grocery store. There, a worker informed me that they did not sell ribbons. I stood to the side and prayed about the situation as Daniel and Allison paid for their supplies. I promised that I would take care of the bubbles. When I looked up, I saw the helium balloon section of the store. There they were, spools of blue ribbon for sale. It was another particular providence I felt grateful for. I had the math figured out by now. The wedding was a beautiful affair. The men were handsome. The ladies were gorgeous. Patty's bridesmaid wore stunning blue saris and looked very feminine. Patty chose to wear a traditional white American wedding gown. Her parents seemed very happy and did fine with all of the American ceremony, which involved Dad escorting the bride and Mom being escorted down the center aisle. Patty's family was very close. Unfortunately, they had to return to New Jersey and India after the wedding. I managed to catch them still long enough to get all the names of Patty's grandparents so I could do a wedding announcement for our local paper. Joel and Patty are planning a trip to India within the year to have an Indian wedding ceremony there also. The music was wonderful. The audience sang "And Can It Be" by Charles Wesley, led by David Lanning. Joel had hired an excellent pianist and cellist for the occasion. Cousin Margaret and David sang a duet of "Wonderful, Merciful Savior" by Selah, with beautiful harmony as David accompanied them on the piano. He is a worship pastor in Minnesota. Then we were ready for the ceremony, the charge, and the vows. A church filled with friends and relatives were witnesses with the Lord for these solemn moments. It was a summation of many years of prayer by several people. One unique part of the ceremony was the inclusion of the Indian custom of actually tying a knot in a special necklace worn around the bride's neck, probably where the term originated. In India, a couple is not officially married until the knot is tied. I was very, very grateful that my life was spared to behold the scene before me and then to hear, "I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride." Mr. and Mrs. Joel Gravely exited the sanctuary and everyone followed to the lower floor to partake of the delicious meal catered by an Indian restaurant. The head table was placed on an elevated stage, and elevated to centerpiece on the head table was a cast iron holder for the framed photo I had presented to Joel a few days earlier. The one that had lain under his guest bed in our house for quite some time. I don't think the decorators, Sharon and Margaret, knew the story behind it, but it made a perfect centerpiece, along with the bouquet in the wedding colors of blue and orange. The toast from the maid of honor, Kim, and best man, older brother Charles, lent charm, dignity, and smiles to the occasion. Older couples seated around the room agreed to participate in a newlywed game competition. We got to know them better by their answers. When everyone's attention turned to the wedding cake cutting or something else, Charles and some of the groomsmen sneaked outside and prepared the new couple's car for their departure. An Alabama groomsman couldn't resist writing Bama Bride on the front windshield. The usual string of empty cans was attached to the rear of the car. In a few minutes, Washington, D.C. would be officially notified that Joel and Pratty were just married. Allison began passing out the bubble flask to all the guests. Soon we got the signal to go outside and line up on each side of the front walkway of the church. Charles left to bring their car around to the front. Every eye turned toward the red front door. The glowing couple appeared and began their descent down the steps and walkway, amid cheers and hundreds of bubbles. It was a crowning touch to a happy occasion. Margaret Lanning caught the moment with her camera and later posted it on Facebook. I used it for a wedding announcement in our local paper. Joel and Pratty got into the getaway car and drove off. In a few days, they took their honeymoon trip on a Caribbean cruise. Joel has saved for that trip for years. It proved to be very, very special, just as he had envisioned it. Together, they saw El Morro, Old San Juan, and El Yunque National Rainforest in Puerto Rico. Places that Alan and I had seen when we accompanied Allison there in one of her transitions. The cruise also included other islands and beaches in the area, such as St. Thomas and Martinique. After all the stress of wedding preparations, some downtime in the Caribbean was definitely therapy. The counselor and the Indian princess needed some time to reflect and get acquainted. But at the Washington International Church, the rest of us got busy with cleanup and saying goodbye to wedding guests. Patty's friends and parents were leaving immediately for New Jersey. Judy and Mark had traveling ahead. I didn't know when I would see them again. All the friends and family members had lives to resume. So did we. A new Alan and Dottie adventure was waiting for us in North Carolina.